Okay, I'm not sure if I'm live yet. I'm just also trying to operate the switcher as well as the actual streamer, and checking on YouTube see if it's actually live. Okay, it looks like it. All right, cool guys. So welcome to this session. I just want to actually just put up the where is it here? On air, there you go. Just put up the logos and stuff. So, today, I finished with all these screws. So I've managed to put in, it must be around about 1,400 screws that I've actually put into this boarding. But all the boards are actually screwed up and up on the wall, on the floors and everything else. So I'm at a place now where we'll be ready to start doing the joint plastering and everything else. There was a couple of things that I did discover when working with the masonite, doing the walls. When I tried to actually put up a full sheet, sort of it's 1200 or just over 1200 wide, onto the framing, I discovered there was a bit of a sort of a warping shape, which didn't sit well with me because I wanted to make sure it was a flat looking as I possibly can get it. So I ended up actually cutting the boards actually in half. So basically we just got just over, I think it's about 610, 610, 610, 610. It's the way I did the framing as well. I made sure there was at least framing in the middle of the board as well as double framing at the edge of each board. So when we actually put it up, we could actually screw across the whole sort of face of the board without any issues. But as I said, with a full sheet, I found that it actually showed you those warping sort of, you probably wouldn't have seen it once it was white and there was light on it. But while I could see it in the boards, I wanted to make sure that was right. So that was one sort of thing that I had to make sure I changed. I cut all the actual wall panels actually in half and then screwed them up on the wall. The corners, obviously the corner one took me a little bit of time. This corner, you got to make sure that you get it's almost like a shape like this that you got to actually play around with getting that right. So I only got away with putting 3 pieces in the corner there, which was fine. I think also when you do get to the stage of actually plastering up this corner and the joins in the corner, not to put it too thick, especially down in this section, right into this corner, because if it takes too long to dry and you get a bit of impatient because you want to now get your wall finished, rather put it on thin sand, and then rather do it slowly, carefully. So that's what I'm planning to do on that, because I've heard so many stories where they just plastered and they thought it looked dry. As soon as they took a sander to it, it started messing up. So just save yourself some headaches by just doing that corner very carefully, slowly, and stuff like that. So the only place I actually used a full board was actually the one section I'm standing on now. It's most of the curve on this wall. And then I used a full board actually on this side, which is also most of the actual curve. The rest of the floor I actually cut up into squares, and I put them down like that. One thing you got to also understand, obviously, with any raw product, depending on the weather. So like when I started with these boards, it was actually wet, cold, feeling very damp, humid and stuff. So when I put the boards down, the following day I came through and then I could see like these little bubbles or sort of raises in the floor between where I screwed it down. So just be aware when you do that. I then just put an additional row of screws through the board, and that seemed to sort it out. Also, what I had to do on some of them was actually just take my little angle grinder with a blade on it, and I actually just cut lines just where the actual joins actually happen, just to allow for any of that sort of expansion that was going to be happening before I paint the boards and put the joint filler in. So I'm ready for the joint filler. The stuff that I actually use on here, so material wise, if you're going to take on a project like this, just be prepared for the hard work. Plan. That's what I can make sure that you actually do. So the actual framing of the actual wall, that I think I bought the 38 by 38 timber, and that's what I used to actually frame this. I didn't want like a 75 or a 50 mil. I didn't want it coming too far off the walls because I wanted to maximize the space as much as possible. So I framed with 38 by 38. That came to about, I think it was about 800 Rand for the actual timber framing. Then I had two, I think it was about 45 by 20 mil for the pieces between the curves, and that was also done with pine. That was a little bit more expensive, and I think I may have paid around about 1,000 Rand or something for that stuff, because it was planed all round and it was from one of the general hardware guys. So you're looking at, say, 1,800 Rand for the framing. I already had chipboard and plywood actually here at the studio, so that's what I used then to cut the curves. So if you're looking at cutting curves, depending on the size of your wall, I think I used probably about one sheet of, if I bought one sheet of chipboard, I probably would have been able to cut all my curves on there. So then you got the price of a chipboard board, whatever that is going to cost nowadays, I'm not sure. And then the actual masonite. So the actual masonite came, I think it was about 2,600 or 3,000 for the actual masonite boards. So I mean, it's not an expense. It's not expensive on material wise, but obviously I've said my biggest saving has been the labor. So I've actually done this completely myself, nobody else. So from day one, I've been actually building this. So that's where my major saving has actually come in with this wall. Things like screws and stuff, obviously put the framing up on the wall. I used I think it was 65 millimeter anchor screws that I put the framing up on the wall with. The screws that I used to screw the boards on was these guys. It's the little drywall screws. I think these ones are the so it's a 3.5 head and it's 16 millimeters long, and there's 1,600 screws apparently in this tub. So I've probably put 1,400 screws completely into this wall. The Rhinoglide, which I'm going to be getting in next week, I'm going to start pushing in some of the joint plastering and stuff like that. Now with these screws, I made sure that I had 2 drills on hand. Okay, so one actually had a countersink piece in, so I actually countersunk every screw that I put into this wall. Because the drywall screws, if you're using drywall, they countersink themselves because the board is soft. It's quite impressive how hard this masonite is. The screw head doesn't countersink. It actually stays raised above the actual board level. So I countersunk every single one of these and made sure that they were at least flush or a little bit under. So when I come to do the joint filling and putting over the screw heads, they should be covered and I shouldn't have any issue on that type of thing. Joining, the actual joint plastering. So what you need to do is, obviously you don't just cover this little piece over with a little bit of plaster and that is all done. You got to actually spend some time, and you're probably going to be plastering about a ruler length, around about a 30 centimeter, 300 mil, actually wide. like this. So when you actually sand, you're actually feathering it in. So when you actually paint, because what I find is paint actually magnifies anything that you actually put it on top of. So if you've got a big bump or something in your joint plaster, it's going to be seen in the paint, and you don't want to do that because you don't want to create any type of shadow once you actually do this. So plastering is very, very important, making sure that you actually plaster wide enough, feather it in so it actually seems like it's actually nice and flush. So that's on that side of things. Once this plastering is done, you've got to let it dry fully. Don't even be tempted to even touch it if you think that it's actually still wet, because you don't have to now start redoing things. So rather make sure that it's dry before you start putting sandpaper and stuff to that. Sanding the actual joint plaster, I would say around about a 60 grit, I would say. Probably should be fine, but I will actually have a look at that. On the painting side, I'm still sort of looking and researching what paint I could possibly use on the wall, but I'll probably speak to my buddy Tyler at Tamba just to double check on what paint I should actually be using here, because it must be matte, but I also want to try and make it as washable as possible, and so I don't have to repaint every time. Yeah, so that is that. So finally got to the stage where all the screws are actually in on this wall. If there's any questions around this, please put them in the comments. I mean, I'm not monitoring the comments now because I'm obviously the only one in studio. Put them in the comments and I'm glad to sort of, if I can answer it, and I will answer you back on that. What else is there? And then obviously, as I mentioned, and as you would have seen some of my posts, we've got these guys. Okay, so these are the guys we're actually going to be putting on the actual ceiling. So I've got the buys, Lightmon LP 600 buys, which will be going up. I'm going to be starting probably on the trunking today. So I'm going to start putting the trunking up on the ceiling, getting everything in place there, and also mounting where the plug points are going to be up on the ceiling. And then after I've actually done the joining and the filling and the sanding and the painting, then I would actually mount the lights and stuff up and see how it looks. But what I'm also going to do, which I've actually been thinking about this, is once this is all actually done, I might then actually have a bit of a competition where I'll create a competition, and we'll have a couple of you guys come through and be able to shoot at the studio with a model. We'll set up some braais outside, have some boerewors rolls and all that type of thing, almost like a Cycwall wetting. So I will put a competition together soon, and you will see that actually I'll probably put it onto Facebook and Instagram, so you guys can have time to enter that, and look forward to seeing you guys and having a go on the Cycwall. It should be quite an interesting day as well. So yeah, that's where I'm at. As I said, any questions around this? If you are going to take this on, just please be aware that it is a lot of work. I knew it was going to be a lot of work because I was involved in the carpentry industry. Not to rush it. If any advice, not to rush it, rather take time. I was leaving the boards up once I put the screws in, leaving the boards up and going checking to making sure there was no movement in any of the joins. Because as soon as you start getting movement in the joins and you put your plaster on, you can then start getting your cracking, and you don't want to do that after spending so much time and effort in actually building this. And yeah, so I think that is it. As I said, ask any questions. If I don't know the answer, I can definitely get through to Tamba and actually get some answers from them and let you guys know. All right, so that's about it. Let me know what you think as well. It's looking a bit better than it was the other day, and it's looking a bit more sort of complete. And this is where now the hard work, I think, is going to be coming in, is going to be the plastering and filling and waiting to dry and sanding and skimming again. Because I can tell you what, once you do plaster or fill up the joints and you do get it dry and you sand it, there's probably going to be some areas where you have to re-skim and making sure that it's actually perfect. Because remember, as soon as you put paint on top of anything, it almost magnifies those defects and stuff. So making sure, spend some time, don't rush it, and get it the best that you can first time round. All right, so that's about it, guys. Those who are watching live, how's it to everybody? And those who are watching on recording, how's it for all the recording guys? Please ask questions if you've got questions, and let me know if you want to actually do a project like this. And yeah, I'll be willing to help, as I said before. All right, so that's it, guys. Thanks for watching, and we will see you on Getting to Grips. And obviously, anything Godox, make sure you get to www.godox.co.za. Use my coupon code, and the same for Golden Power batteries. As you can see, my background poles are down. They're not up at the moment. They're all that side of the studio. But yeah, I'm going to leave these brackets actually up in place. So if I do need to still drop in a color paper roll that I've got pink, green and all that type of stuff. If I do need, I can still utilize the actual paper roll mechanism. So yeah, that is it. Cheers for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Cheers.